Welcome to Biz Help for You with host Candy Messer. Entrepreneurs like to focus on the big picture, like profitability, success, and a smooth-running organization. But there always seems to be those little things like taxes, employee compensation, laws, regulations, and more. Now you can get the answers you need in one place. Join us today as we break it all down for you. Now, here's your host, Candy Messer.
Hello and welcome to Biz Help for You with Candy Messer. Thank you for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed the topic of my last episode. And if you are unable to join in and would like to listen to the show, links can be found on my YouTube and Facebook pages, as well as multiple favorite podcast platforms. And if you'd like to receive notifications on when the podcasts have been uploaded, please like and subscribe. Now, let's learn a little bit about my guest today. Debbie Mrazek is a sales expert and author of 13 books about selling, including the best-selling The Field Guide to Sales, the all-weather, all-terrain guide to selling. She's a seasoned C-suite executive bringing over 30 years of problem-solving, innovation, and leadership ability to her positions, largely in the technology industry. A highly sought-after motivational speaker that absolutely loves empowering people to sell and achieve more. She turned her top 1% sales career into an in-demand sales consulting company, The Sales Company, where she engages sales teams and individuals in creating predictable sales success through coaching, consulting, and training. So, Debbie, welcome to the show.
Good morning. Good morning. Nice to be here. Thank you.
I'm excited and I'm thankful to have you on the show. And I always ask my guests, before I start asking questions on the topic, I want to know a little bit more about you and how did you get into the sales side of things?
You bet. So when I was in college, I went to Texas Tech in Lubbock, Texas. And in that world, the business was oil, banking, cotton, and cattle. And then Texas Instruments came to town and they ran 3 shifts. We were college students, so, trying to work our schedules and all. So I went to work for TI doing accounts payable. Well, lo and behold, who knew when you worked for a big company, you could change and do other things. So I stayed with TI for 3 years and moved into a sales position and absolutely loved it. Yes, I got a salary, but, the commission was really the deal. And to me, sales has always been like a game, and it's like a game I can win if I figure out how to do this right. And so I have always loved it. And then I had done the technology business for years, selling semiconductors, printed circuit boards. And what I was seeing is we were having more companies that are very common today. We have all kinds of startups, but then that was not the case. But I was seeing more begin. And what was happening is they were started by engineers who are brilliant, but they could not do business development or sales. So they lost all their money, their mom's money, maybe even some VC or bank money. And so I had another friend of mine who also came up the same way, but in marketing. And so the two of us started consulting. And so, both of us have grown exponentially and it's just been fun. And today I get to do all kinds of industries and I love it.
Perfect. I mean, there's so many people who don't enjoy the sales part of it or don't know what to do. And so having someone like you who absolutely loves it, is great to have that insight from. So I know we're going to be discussing some information from one of your recent books as well too. And I know one of the things that you mentioned is a rule of 250. So I would love for you to first just explain what is that?
Yes. So the rule of 250 is that each and every one of us, you, me, anyone, knows at least 250 people. And this may seem ridiculous to some people and they say no, but if you sit down, I'm just talking pencil and paper, start with your family, write all of them, your friends, who'd you go to school with, who'd you go to college with, who'd you play sports with, who have you worked with, who's at your church, who's in your volunteer organization, all of that, write them all down. Because the truth is people want to help you, but you don't let them know that you need help or you're trying something or you're going to do something new. And so a couple of examples I give with this, because what I find most often is people don't want to include their family.
Hmm.
Well, I have a mom who was, 5 foot nothing. And when I wrote my first book, let me tell you, when you write your first book, you send the copy to your mother, FedEx, overnight, 10 a.m. delivery. Yes. And then you wait by the phone for her to call and say, darling, it's wonderful. Well, I do this, but she doesn't call. And I'm thinking, where is that girl? She said she would be home this morning for the FedEx man. So anyway, I finally get a hold of her, and she doesn't say hello, it's great, anything. She goes, we have got a problem. I said, okay, what is our problem? She said, I'm at the bookstore with John, who she always goes to. And I explained to him that he knows you are from Wichita Falls, Texas, and his bookstore should have this book in it. It has that thingy on the back, a barcode reader. Mm-hmm. And he goes in the back, gives my mom, the little wonder one, the name of the person in New York, direct phone number, direct email to talk to them about getting the book on their shelves. My mother was not formally educated or whatever, but she was just like, now you go get this taken care of. I had a client, Candy, for 4 years. And this was a gentleman that you would have loved, gracious in public situations, wonderful client, everything about him. But like many people in Dallas, Texas, he wasn't from here. So he went to grandma's every year for the holiday. And he complained incessantly. And this is a wonderful man, but he talked about them like they were wolves. And so I finally said to him, you know what? Number one, I can't believe you're so wonderful and all of them are so awful. I have seen you at public events, chamber events. Why don't you go there and act like you don't know them? And he said, Mrazek, you make me nuts. And I said, well, you make me nuts and grandma won't live forever. Fast forward Monday morning, I have a voicemail of someone, Candy, screaming. Like you're not sure who it is at first, and then you get the inflection and go, whoa. And I'm just honoring enough, you're not going to be my client anymore. I'm going to call you back and ask you why, kind of thing. And I called him. He said, Debbie, guess who my uncle is? I said, I haven't a clue. He's the president of a division of General Electric. What company have I been trying to get into for 4 years? General Electric. I could not hardly compose myself before I said, how long has he been your uncle? 45 years, So here was a man who was delighted to help him on Monday after, the holiday. And so I find that all of us, and today we have LinkedIn, where we can all go and see, and you and I can even see who we're connected with the same. And so people have this and they don't think about using it. So when I ask them, and the rule of 250, why will you not tell these people what you need? And they give me all kinds of excuses. And then I turn it on them. So if any of those people called you and said they were doing something and needing help, would you do it? And they say yes. And so that is one of the most powerful things in sales is you do not have to do it all your own. And if you know what you want, identify your ideal client, you'd be amazed at what people will bring you.
That's so true. And like you said, with all the social media too, there may be people that we're still in touch with through social media that normally we wouldn't have been, like, high school friends. I still have people I'm in communication with, and we graduated a long time ago. I won't say how long ago, but and so you do have where there are people that you may not have otherwise been in touch with that you still can communicate with and reach out. So I think you're right. It's probably way more than 250 that we actually have.
Absolutely. And that's the point. The 250 is simply to give it a reasonable number that somebody might even start. But Candy, I don't know what it is on your LinkedIn, but like I have thousands on LinkedIn and Facebook and Twitter and whatever. And then I have my own database that I have put together the last 30 years. And so, I say this to people when I speak, who do you want to know? Go to my LinkedIn, and I say this to your audience as well. Go to my LinkedIn. If you see somebody there you want to know, just send me a note and tell me. I will introduce you.
Nice.
Well, people say, well, that's ridiculous. I'm a stranger. And it's like, no, you came through Candy. That makes you wonderful to me unless you prove yourself differently. Yeah.
Well, and that's what I was going to say is how you can expand even those that are in your network, so that you can meet others too, instead of feeling you have to go to like a networking event and start talking to people in person. Like you said, if you see someone has a connection, why not ask for an introduction? And of course, not like rush right in and try to push, what it is you want, but develop that relationship with them, and then, develop that circle of influence.
Well, and one thing about that too, though, I feel like, Candy, if I introduced you to our wonderful friend, Debbie, and I've known her for years, I want you to feel comfortable to talk to her like she's already your friend.
Mm-hmm.
So mm-hmm. you can say what it is you're looking for or trying to do. And Debbie's not going to be offended because she's saying, oh, well, my other friend Debbie sent you, you must be delightful.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And so I love that and how it helps people get comfortable with asking.
Mm-hmm. And it's a warm introduction, right?
Yes.
Not you just trying to reach out to someone on your own.
Yes. Yes.
It makes it easier.
Yes. We want that.
Mm-hmm. So I know you mentioned before too, saying, well, we don't have to do this on our own, but a lot of people feel that they really do. They can't really reach out and ask for that help. So why do you think that hinders us from asking somebody for help? Or like you mentioned, even talking to our family, like what is that issue that we have that we don't want to ask?
I think I won't speak globally on this, but domestically here in the United States, I think it's our culture. Our culture is we can do it on our own. We can build it. We're strong. We can do anything, that kind of deal. Well, you can. And I get that. But the way the world works today, you have so many people that today you can communicate with easily that was never available before. Mm-hmm. So helping people understand and using that question, would you do it for someone else? Mm-hmm. Because I think most of us think, oh, well, like they're busy or they're much more important than me. And, oh, they know, I don't know, that kind of thing. And so we dismiss our own wonderful qualities and put that on them. And they're no more thinking that than the man in the moon.
Right.
They're thinking like this gentleman's uncle. Mm-hmm. He thought his nephew was divine. Mm-hmm. That he would waltz him into General Electric on Monday morning just because he's his nephew and he knows. But his business history, the nephew had been extremely successful. Mm-hmm. Why wouldn't he have done it? He just didn't know he wanted it.
Exactly. We have to ask.
Yes, exactly. So I think that's what it is mainly is, we diminish our skill sets and think, oh, they're nothing. But if you have them, we'd say, oh, those are great. So we're hesitant to tell other people what we want or what we need.
Right. Well, I think we probably also will think like, oh, they're busy or I don't want to bother them. And like you said, if someone were to reach out to us and ask for help, we're going to be willing to help. So why not think that someone else, and what's the worst that could happen, right? If we ask, and it's not a good time or something like that, or it's not something they feel they can do for whatever reason, they can let you know.
Exactly. And, another thing I found for that, and I love to use this example because most people understand it. So say, for example, Candy, you said to me, you wanted to know someone at Chase Bank. And I said to you, girl, I don't know anybody at Chase, but I know some great folks at Comerica. Mm-hmm. Could that help you? And you're like, oh my heavens, yes. We would love to do both. So another thing that happens when we're asking, then it gives people an idea of what we're doing, what we're looking for. So they can say, I don't know Chase, girl, but I know Comerica, and give you the opportunity to say, I would love that. Or no, I really need Chase for these reasons. But at least now I know, and I have a company that I can relate to that.
Right.
Not just, what your ideal client looks for, but a particular company. Because if I can get you in that company, even if it's not the right person for you, that's a stronger referral internally when that person introduces you to the right person than me.
Right. That's so true.
And, and one other thing I'd like to say on LinkedIn, as far as the way we have today, these tools that we have, LinkedIn, everyone who signs up has to sign themselves up.
Mm-hmm.
I cannot go and make Candy Messer be on LinkedIn. She has to do that. We all know what LinkedIn is, how it's supposed to work. So I have absolutely no qualms if I am needing something today, even from somebody I do not know, but they're on LinkedIn. I send them a direct message, tell them who I am, what I'm looking for, and you'd be amazed, 8 out of 10 times they respond.
Mm-hmm.
And the two that don't, I know people who I know who don't respond sometimes.
Right.
So, that's the other thing is, on top of the rule of 250, you do have these tools that you can access. And sure, maybe not all of them will respond, but many of them will, especially if you're concise and to the point about what you need or what you're wanting to have happen.
Mm-hmm. Right, exactly. So use everything that's available to you effectively.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely. And, in this day and time, it is also much more acceptable to be small businesses. 80% of American business is what they call small, but
Right.
I'm talking even small, like I'm a one-person company and I use contractors to do other things. But, like if you have 10 or 20 people or whatever, before you didn't have access to tools that would help you or get you into, groups or big companies. And now you have access just like the big guys do.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody has it.
Right. So going back to the topic of sales, right? And people sometimes are afraid, to even have to market their services or products or things like that. And so we aren't as successful as we hope we would be. So why do you think that we really are afraid of getting out there and talking about our services, our products, and we're not as successful as we really hope we would be?
Exactly. So we believe in what we do. We're passionate about it, but we don't tell anybody.
Mm-hmm.
And I think one of the things is that people believe that they need to go in and talk about, what they have, what they offer, whatever. The fact of the matter is, the only thing you need to be talking about is what the customer's doing, what their needs are. So I liken this to a roadmap. Like if I were coming to see you today, I was going to California, I'm going to see you, I'm going to see my daughter in Los Angeles, and I may not have a paper map anymore. I got it, girl. But, I'm on my Google Maps and I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to leave Dallas at this time and I'm going to get to El Paso by then. I'm going to get to Phoenix and then, that kind of thing. So a sales journey is the same. What is it you really need to ask on your first call? Well, first and foremost, do they have a budget assigned to this project already? They may, and that's okay. They may just be doing some forecasting. That's all right. But you need to know up front, because if there is no budget assigned to it, they're not really sure about it. This isn't something you need to spend a lot of time with. And keep in mind, you haven't said anything about you yet.
Right.
It's them.
Right.
And then if you ask them, what it is they're struggling with, everything that your product solves. I hope you do. And so you could respond. But if you don't know specifically what their issue is, or just a piece of the issue, then you don't know really which of your services or offerings to give them or to suggest to them. So I say, make the first visit all about them, understanding what they want. And once you have all of that understanding, go back with your team or yourself or whatever, decide on the best, plan or idea, whatever that you have, then go back to them again, present that, ask them always too, has anything changed since the last time I was here? And then, present that to them and go through that process. So you're building it. And these are done by open-ended questions. Where people get screwed up in sales is they ask yes, no questions. The buyer says no, and the salesperson has no idea what to do next. But if you ask an open-ended question, they have to answer. Well, guess what? To have open-ended questions, you need to think about them before you go in there. What do I need to know today on this appointment? And what do I need to know on this one? So that then the other thing people struggle with is asking for the order. Imagine that you did it in this way and you get to the end and you say, is there anything else? And they go, no, I think we're ready. And so it's a conversation. It's not like, oh my God, I have to sell them. And so it's a conversation. There are no more constraints or, anything. And so great. So what's the purchase order number? Terrific. And we'll deliver on. And it's a conversation that hopefully you want to continue. And some people do have a business where they only do business with somebody once. I understand that. But, most of us have a business where, like for me, I don't have people that come to me every year, but for the last 30 years, I've had people come to me again and again and again. I love that. And I foster that relationship to make that happen. I don't just do business with them and go, I'm done.
Right.
I keep up with them.
I think from my perspective too, what I have seen before too, or even my own feeling sometimes is when, like you're saying, someone doesn't even necessarily know what you need, and they're just trying to push their product, or sell their service to you without even having any idea of what you need. So I remember being at a networking event once, and someone I'd never met who's in mortgage, and refinancing and things just came up and was handing out his cards, and he was like, "Here, I can help refinance your home." It's like, you don't even know the fact that I don't even own a home. At that point, I was living in an apartment. Right. And so not even knowing that, that's the turnoff, right? When you haven't even had a conversation to find out what are the needs that I have. So like you said, really having that conversation. And if you are talking to them and you find out they have a need and your service can meet that need, you're actually giving them a resource. It's helping them, right? So you don't have to feel like, oh, I'm pushing something onto them, because you're actually giving them an opportunity to solve a problem that they have.
Yes. There's an old movie with Alec Baldwin called Glengarry Glen Rose. And in that movie, it's, some people think that's the epitome of sales. It is not. But they talk about in the movie, the ABCs of sales is always be closing. Let me tell you what they're talking about there. That's bullying. That is not sales. The real ABCs of sales is what you just explained. Always be caring. If I took a moment to say, Candy, are you living in an apartment or a home now? Immediately that's about you.
Right.
It's helping me, but it's about you. And it can lead to, I've lived in an apartment forever. I've never owned a home. Okay. She's never owned a home. So she's going to need to learn how to do that. And then if you have a home, but you're moving up, you maybe have selected a different neighborhood you want to, so I could help her with that. And so always be caring. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And this is key to my success, I believe.
Exactly. So if a business owner is thinking of, I need to figure out, especially if they have a product, I need to figure out, inventory and all of that too. But even with the service, having to make sure they have enough staff, to meet the needs.
Or resources.
Exactly. Can you talk about how they can potentially forecast sales for a next, whatever period of time is 3 months, 6 months? Like, how do you help them analyze that side of things?
Very good. So I believe in a forecast, which is the reason I wrote the Field Guide to Sales. I had worked for this guy I thought at the time was a monster and had figured out he was a genius. But what we do is what we call a rolling forecast. So you and I are here today in December. And so if we were beginning our engagement today, we would begin your forecast with December 2022. And it would go to November 2023. And what we would do is we would notate, we know who our customers are already, how much money they're giving to us. We know what proposals we have outstanding. We know what we've, quoted on that. So you would put that in. And then you probably have prospects already and maybe even some hard leads. And you put that down. And the reason I say rolling is because this is actually a dynamic document that you do every day if you're doing it correctly. So oftentimes, especially in companies, they ask the sales force to do their forecasts between Christmas and New Year's. When are they least likely to be interested in doing a forecast? And then management manages to that forecast the rest of the year and then wonder why it doesn't work. So what I find is people who have never forecasted, if you start doing this way, here's what happens at the end of the next 12 months. You then have a document that you can go back and look at and say, I had this suspect beginning in February. By April, I had him to a prospect. May, I had him to a proposal. And actually in May too, I closed the order. So if I can do that, February, March, April, May, in 4 months, what could I do to make that a shorter period of time? How could I have done that in 3 months? Or maybe it is that it is 4 months. And so then you know how to forecast for that one going forward. It's 4 months, 4 months, 4 months until, if they tell you something different today, that's why I say it's dynamic. You would go in and change it. But what I find is I go in and start working with people and ask them, how much do you want to do in sales this year? Most oftentimes they say, I don't know. And that's a problem right there. But I say, okay, if you could imagine, what would you, and let's just say they say $1 million. I say, terrific. Here's your assignment for the next week, is just to document what you know already, who your customers are, who your proposals are, your prospects. Just document that. Bring it back next week. Well, Candy, this is what happens 9 3/4 time out of 10. They come in, they're so excited. They hate me because they had to do this at first, but now they're so excited. And they say, Deb, I told you last week I wanted to do $1 million, but guess what? I already know about 3 million. And I always say the same thing. Okay, so do you want to do 3 or 1? I'm good either way, you decide. Right. And see, these are things they already know without doing another thing. But because they don't have it documented somewhere, they're not keeping up with it on a daily basis, they forget. They it's like, oh my gosh. And then, say it's December and you said, oh my God, I told Joe I'd call him in November and I didn't. Pick up the phone and call him. 9 times out of 10, Joe's been busy anyway. Right. So it's never too late, but documenting, keeping up with it. And the way to learn to create what works for you is by doing yours. So the first year is tough. Seeing how it all works for you and being honest with yourself. It really did take you 4 months to close that, not 2 like you were telling yourself. So those things make it honest. And then you can look at the next year, change what you're doing. So maybe you make it in 2 or 3 months instead of 4. And then what are you doing next? That kind of thing. The other thing is always having it in a 12-month rolling. So when January comes, December is now part of a report. And January to December. When January ends, it's February to next January. So you never stop it. It's always great. And let me tell you something. When people do this, if they ever need to go to the bank, whether they want an SBA loan or some other loan, or they want to show VCs what they do, most companies do not do this. They have no clue what they have. And yet they show up at the bank thinking they're going to loan them money. My people who have gone in with this, and we all understand suspects, prospects, and outstanding, part leads are like blue sky, but I've documented them and I know what, and I can answer to each one. But somebody can see that you really know what you're doing in your business and you really have opportunities, and not only for today, but for 12 months. Let me tell you, they love you because they do not normally get that. And I know you're in the numbers piece of it. So if I'm wrong, you tell me, but that has been my experience. And so it's good for people because, for example, if you get a large project, something larger than you've ever had, maybe you do need extra resources for that, like extra people or extra technology equipment, computers or something. Well, if you know that's coming, then you can look at what do I have coming in, what are my other costs, and all, and you can say, you know what, we're going to be okay. We can add 2 people. We can have 3, whatever it is. So you can plan accordingly and be successful on your end and not have to go back and tell the customer, oh, I screwed up.
Exactly. Well, like you said, when you're taking the time to really analyze and take data that you've had already and then forecast that into the next, like I said, 3 months, 6 months, obviously the rolling year. And you can go to the bank with those details. They know that you're very into what's going on in your business. Numbers. You're not just making something up just because you need a loan. So yes,
Absolutely.
they like to have those hard facts, things that are more provable than just, I think this is what we're going to do. If you can say, here's what we did in the last 12 months and here's why I'm projecting this. Yes, they're going to trust that much more.
I tell them to take a copy, a paper copy with them and show them what you have. But then, like something under prospects, maybe point to that yourself and say, let me give you an example. This project is Mary Smith. It is worth $10,000 by what I know about it today. But Mary's budgeting cycle isn't until June. So I will not have further information until May if we're really going to proceed with this. Well, when you do that and you could speak to each number on that page, that's powerful. Even though it's like blue sky, we don't know for sure that we're going to get it, but you can speak to it.
Exactly. Yes. Much more interesting to the bank, right? As support for why you will be able to pay back the loan, because that's their main thing, right? They want to mitigate their risk. They want to be able to help businesses, but at the same time, they want to make sure that they're making wise investments. So if you can prove your information up to that point and why you're using that to forecast into the future, it's much more realistic. Like you said, it's still not necessarily going to be 100%, or even 90%, just depending. You could be 120% above it even, who knows? But at least you are targeting into information that you can extrapolate data for.
Yes. And I also think, I know people don't think about it this way, but it is selling. Instead of selling your product or service, you're selling your company, your culture, what you've created. And so you need to be speaking to them again, not about you, but how that bank works. You've done your research, what kind of loans they have. So you're answering for them, you're asking them the questions they're going to ask you. And then they tell you exactly, I need to have 6 months of this, a year of this, that kind of thing. And so it's no different than selling a product. You're selling yourself to them.
Exactly. Well, this has been an informative discussion. I'm sure, listeners are going to appreciate the insights that you shared, but I know we're running short on time. So I want to ask if you have an offer that you would like to share with our listeners.
You bet. So we are here at the end of the year and you have, do you have 23 days left in the year? And if you're not where you want to be this year and you would like to do like a quick audit with me about what you've done, have me look at it and see if there's anything that maybe could come in the next 23 days, and worst case, maybe January, I will do a $500 session for 2 hours to sit down and talk specifically about what you have.
Perfect. And if listeners want to reach out and connect with you, I know we discussed LinkedIn, but what other things might you want to share as well?
Definitely go to LinkedIn and connect with me there. And then my website is the-sales-company.com.
Perfect. Well, thank you, Debbie, for being a guest on my show and sharing your insights and, helping our listeners on this topic of sales that can sometimes be very scary. So I appreciate your time.
You bet. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it, and best to everybody, and enjoy the holiday.
Thanks. And to the listener, thank you for tuning in. I hope you found this topic interesting and that it answered some questions about the rule of 250. You do not have to do sales alone. If you have any additional questions or comments, be sure to reach out to Debbie at the links that she shared, or you could send me a message at media@abandp.com. I hope you can join me for my next interview. And please remember, you can connect with me on Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn, or my website is abandp.com. You can find the podcast posted on multiple favorite podcast platforms, including iTunes, Google, TuneIn, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, and Spotify. And would you please share my show with those you know and leave a review on your favorite platform? I'd really appreciate your support. Until next time, have a great day.
thank you for listening to Biz Help for You. Please join your host, Candy Messer, again next time. Have a terrific day.